The night was cloaked in silence, broken only by the faint hum of the city beyond her window. She sat there, curled on the edge of her bed, feeling the stillness press against her. The clock read just past midnight, yet sleep refused to come. Her heart was restless, her mind tangled in thoughts she could not confess aloud. There was a hunger within her, one she tried to bury during the daylight hours but which grew too loud to ignore when darkness arrived. It wasn't simply desire for touch, it was the craving for something forbidden, something that could consume her if she allowed it to. Across the city, he sat in his dimly lit apartment, nursing a glass of wine he hadn't really tasted. He was older, nearly 20 years her senior, a man who had lived long enough to understand the consequences of forbidden love. But consequences were the last thing on his mind. His thoughts were filled with her, the curve of her smile, the way her laughter danced like music, the fire in her eyes that made him feel alive again. He told himself it was wrong, that he should keep his distance, but the truth was undeniable. She had already become his midnight craving, and he was powerless against it. Their paths had first crossed in the most ordinary of ways, and perhaps that was why it felt extraordinary. She was young, full of questions and energy, stepping into the world with wide eyes. He was older, more grounded, and yet beneath his steady demeanor, something inside him had been aching for renewal. Their conversations had begun lightly, small talk that should have meant nothing. But words have power, and soon every word exchanged carried unspoken meanings, every look lingered longer than it should, and every accidental touch felt like fire. She remembered the first time his hand brushed against hers. It was at a crowded cafe, a bookshop-style place where the scent of coffee clung to the walls. Their fingers touched as they reached for the same sugar packet, and a shock went through her that nearly made her drop it. She laughed it off, trying to pretend it was nothing, but she had seen the flicker in his eyes. That brief contact had stirred something neither of them dared to name. From that moment, she couldn't stop thinking about him. At night, she replayed their conversations, the warmth of his voice, the weight of his gaze. She had known attraction before, but this was different. It wasn't the simple flutter of a crush. It was deeper, hungrier, almost dangerous. He filled her thoughts like a secret she wanted to keep but also wanted to shout to the world. He tried harder than she did to resist. He told himself she was too young, that the years between them were walls too high to climb. But each time she smiled, those walls crumbled a little more. Each time she looked at him like he was more than just a man, like he was something to be desired, he felt himself falling further. He fought it, but passion has a way of making battles feel impossible to win. Their first kiss happened late one evening when the air outside was heavy with summer heat. They had been walking side by side, their conversation fading into silence as they reached her apartment door. The city buzzed faintly in the distance, but in that moment, the world narrowed to just them. He hesitated, his eyes flickering with restraint, but she stepped closer, close enough for her breath to mingle with his. The choice was hers, and she made it. When their lips met, it wasn't gentle. It was the collision of two souls that had been denying themselves too long. That kiss changed everything. The days that followed became a blur of hidden meetings and stolen moments. They found themselves caught between guilt and desire, between what they should do and what they couldn't resist. Their love existed in shadows, in whispers shared under blankets, in phone calls late at night where words trembled with unspoken hunger. It was wrong, the world would say, but to them it felt like the most honest thing they had ever known. He loved the way she looked at him with eyes full of trust and daring. She loved the way his hand steadied her, the way he touched her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. Each encounter left them craving more, unable to stop, unwilling to let go. Nights became their sanctuary, where passion burned bright and time seemed to disappear. She would sneak out just to see him, heart pounding in her chest as she crossed the quiet streets. He would wait for her by the window, his figure tall and steady, and when she entered his arms, all the doubts and fears vanished. Together, they created a world where only their desire mattered, a world built on midnight cravings and hidden passion. The intensity of their bond frightened them both. There were moments when he would pull back, telling her they had to stop, that it was dangerous to continue. She would listen, tears brimming in her eyes, but then his resolve would break the instant she touched his hand. They were addicted to each other, and no amount of logic could extinguish the fire that consumed them. One night, The storm outside matched the storm within them. Rain pelted against the windows, thunder cracked in the distance, and yet inside, their bodies moved together in desperate harmony. Each kiss was a vow, each caress a confession of need. She whispered his name like a prayer, and he held her as if letting go would destroy him. The world beyond the storm didn't matter. They had each other, and that was enough. But with every hidden embrace came the reminder that they were living a secret. She feared discovery, feared what others would say if the truth came out. He feared it too, but what he feared more was losing her. For the first time in years, he felt alive, and that life was tied to her. She wasn't just his lover, she was his salvation, the one who reignited the fire he thought had died long ago. As summer turned to autumn, their midnight cravings deepened into something neither of them could deny: love. Not just the heat of passion, but love that seeped into every part of them. She found herself dreaming not just of nights but of days with him, of futures where their love wasn't hidden. He began to imagine a life where he could hold her hand in the open, where she wouldn't just be his secret, but his everything. And yet, reality loomed. The world wouldn't understand, wouldn't accept. They were trapped in a fragile balance between desire and fear, passion and consequence. But even with the weight of secrecy pressing on them, they chose each other again and again. Every night she returned to him, every time he reached for her, they were declaring to the universe that this love, though forbidden, was worth every risk. On one particularly quiet night, she lay tangled in his arms, her head resting on his chest as his heartbeat steadied her. "Do you ever regret this?" she asked softly, afraid of his answer. He pressed a kiss into her hair before replying, his voice low and certain. "Never. Not for a single moment. You are my fire." Her heart swelled, and she knew that no matter how complicated the road ahead, she would never regret him either. Their story wasn't simple, nor was it perfect. It was messy, complicated, and full of risks. But it was theirs. Born from a craving that became impossible to ignore, sustained by passion that burned too bright to hide. In the stillness of the midnight hour, they found their truth, not in the approval of others, but in the way they held each other when the world was asleep. And so, they continued. Every kiss, every secret,